Hello, dear listeners. Today I have a very valuable guest from Fitch Ratings. This is Anton Lopatin, a senior analyst, and today we will discuss the importance of credit ratings in financial markets. Anton, can you please elaborate on the importance of credit ratings assigned by international rating agencies for both actually for debt issuers and for debt investors? Why they are important?
Hello, dear colleagues. Hi, Sergey. Nice to meet you. Sure. So, credit rating is important instruments for market participants, which actually reflects independent opinion on the probability of a default of a particular bond or an issue. And this information is usually very useful for all market participants, including regulators, including investors and companies and many other bodies. But it's important to understand that credit rating is not a recommendation to buy or to sell a security. It's just an opinion of independent third party about probability of a default. So from investors' point of view, why credit rating is important? Because this helps investors to build up their portfolios based on their strategy on the bond market and based on their risk appetite, and help them to make up different decisions on the market. So from the issuer perspective, first of all, of course, credit rating helps them to get access to international financing, because it's a requirement to have an international credit rating if you want to issue a bond, place a euro bond, and to get exposure, to get funding from international counterparties. But even banks or companies which do not plan to issue a bond or currently don't have any bonds in their balance sheet, they often apply to ratings because international credit rating sometimes considered as a sign of quality. And it's easier to get open credit lines from third parties, from other banks, in case the issue is rated. And so it helps banks and companies to build up their corresponding relations.
Thank you. I actually heard a lot of myths about the credit rating. Can you please refute the following thesis, which I often hear, that rating assignment is just a mechanical process, and just analyst simply enters data from the issue of financial statement into the scoring models and publish the outcome, and that's it. Is this true or not?
I wouldn't say it's true, because of course when you analyze numbers and when you put data from financial statements, models are very important, but it's only part of rating analysts' work, work that they do for banks or for companies. Why models are very useful? Because models help analysts to calibrate their rating scales, and also very helpful in terms of comparison of issues with each other. So, for example, after population of data from publicly available accounts, analysts can compare banks based on non-performing loans ratio, profitability ratios, capital ratios, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's important to understand that soft factors like management quality, corporate governance, strategy, execution of the strategy, and general risk appetite and underwriting standards are not covered by any models. So it's subject to discussion with the management, and it's subject to assessment of the analysts based on information they have from the management. And also, in crisis times, models are not working actually, because models are based on historical data, and we have a lot of examples when models were not working in crisis times. And for example, in 2020, when we had very unique situation and unique circumstances when pandemic happened, models based on historical data were not working. And as part of analyst's job, as part of analyst's responsibility, is to adjust models in such turbulent times, and this cannot be done without impact from the analyst. So one of the responsibilities of the rating agencies is to maintain these models up to date and calibrate them in turbulent times.
So you see, guys, rating is a complex process and very complex product. I know that you are working for Fitch for more than 10 years, and what non-financial consideration are taken into account in the process of rating on financial institutions? Because I know you are responsible for rating financial institutions in Russia and Uzbekistan.
Yes, so for banks, actually, of course, we focus on both on financial and non-financial factors. The process usually starts with the assessment of operating environment, which is based on macro forecasts, GDP growth, and other macro factors. Then we then we adjust our assessment based on a regulatory framework in a country or on financial market development in a country. About financial factors, I think there are four main factors which we usually analyze as part of the rating process for the bank. It's asset quality, it's capital, performance, profitability, and liquidity. And I think the most time-consuming part is actually asset quality, because of course we can look at in publicly available data like IFRS accounts, share of non-performing exposures in total loans, restructured data, and some other disclosures in a local GAAP or IFRS accounts. But then it's just a starting point. Then we deep into detail. We try to understand what is the composition of the asset. We speak with the management and trying to understand if there is a risk that any additional impairment could arise in the future and then pressure the bank's asset quality, capital, profitability, and other factors. Profitability assessment also important, but our approach is different from equity analysts because equity analysts usually analyzing return on equity, while we more focused on pre-impairment profit, because pre-impairment profit in our view is the main source of it's a main caution for potential uptick in low impairment charges in case of asset quality deterioration. And therefore, I mean, it's just important to understand that depending on what you do, if you're a rating analyst and if you're equity analyst, it's a different approach to different factors. And capital, of course, also important. It's a joke that the more capital is better for rating agency. I would say it's partially true. Because it's actually the caution in case of deep deterioration in financial profile. It's a safety caution for the bank and the source of potential absorption of future problems. So it's also very important. And in terms of other soft factors, we speak with the management, we assess management quality. Corporate governance is also very important for our assessment because it's like a general factor which affects all factors in the bank's profile actually. And also for us, it's very important to understand what is the strategy of the bank, what is execution, what are main directions the bank actually follows. And all this is implemented in our analysis and as a result, and actually affects the rating.
Mm-hmm. And you're responsible for banks in Russia and Uzbekistan. And what additional factors are taken into consideration by you and other Fitch analysts if he or she wants to rate a financial institution from emerging or even from developing markets? Mm-hmm. Are there any specific concerns here?
Yeah, first, methodology is the same. So methodology, we look at the same factors, but of course there are some specifics, I would say. So in emerging markets, banks usually growing faster compared to developed countries, and therefore this results in less seasoned loan books and therefore less tested asset quality. And this again brings more attention to asset quality analyzing by the analyst. So asset quality again, assessment, I just wanted to underline that this is very important and probably more important in emerging markets. So also we believe that corporate governance and banking structure or group structure and transparency of banks in emerging markets usually weaker compared to developed countries, and therefore this results in a more complicated process of information gathering and reconciliation of data from one state to another. So there are some specifics of analyzing banks in emerging markets, but general methodology is the same.
I see. Because we are covering Russia, I must ask this question. What is the Fitch outlook for Russian banking system for the next 3-5 years? Because we are now in post-pandemic stage, we are now in 2021. And what are the key risks which, in your assessment, if realized, will deteriorate the credit standing of Russian banking industries in the next 3-5 years after the pandemic?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, because I think, Russian banks entered this crisis in a good shape, actually. And stability of the banking system improved in the last 5 years after the crisis in 2014, 2015. So banks are better capitalized now. Their margins are, solid, I would say, even compared with other emerging markets. So banks actually have very good cushion of pre-impairment profit and capital, and therefore are able to absorb. We believe that banks in Russia are able to absorb pressure from the pandemic on asset quality and potentially on the performance. And actually, if you look at 2020 numbers in terms of profitability, of course there is some pressure compared with the very successful 2019, but still profitability and performance of the system is decent, I would say. We believe pressure will continue in 2021. But we believe that most lenders are likely to absorb this pressure with their internal, cushions of capital and profitability, and most of them will not need additional capital injection from shareholders or from the government. In the long run, I think development of the banking system always depends from economic conditions, and future forecasts will depend on what trends we can see in economy. But I think in general, the main risk which we will monitor for banking system in the next 3 or 5 years could be asset quality, because, as I said, it's a main factor affecting the rating in terms of financial profile, and especially in emerging markets, as we discussed. And therefore, we believe that it's a main thing to monitor in Russia in the next 5 years.
Thank you very much, Anton.
Thanks.
Now myself and my listeners became more familiar with rating and how the ratings are assigned. Thank you very much.